Welcome back here again on the Roundtable. We so appreciate you spending some time with us here on this Sunday, joined by Dr. Romulus Duran, Interim Superintendent for the Toledo Public Schools, coming fresh off a levy win this past week. Voters approving a renewal levy for the Toledo Public District. Dr. Duran, as you sit here, I want you to take a look at our monitor and tell me if you recognize this guy. And who is that guy?
That whipping rover linebacker over there at the University of Toledo.
Talk to me, and we look, that is a stern look you got there on that face. Talk to me a little bit about kind of we talked a little bit about it in the first segment, but that athletic mentality. Yeah. Why is it so important to try to, whether people are into sports or not, there's kind of that mentality we're picking up on you, that you're bringing to this school district. Are we reading it right?
You know what, I think the philosophy behind it is what makes it most important. Whether it's athletics, whether it's music or anything else, there's something about team building in regard to how do you bring individuals together as a team to collectively work to make things happen.
Who was your coach?
My coach was Coach Pinko.
Okay.
And position coach Amstutz.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I tell people, and I tell the students when just as we spoke about earlier, is don't become institutionalized. Understand why we're doing data analysis. I said people don't realize, they think players just get out there and play. I said no, we don't just get out there and play. We spend weeks studying statistical probability of the human tendencies of the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Meaning the more I'm able to recognize his tendencies and his habits, the better I can put myself in position, because I recognize the formation where the team is going. Yeah. At the same time, understand the play that person has a natural intuition to do. That's what you do in education, is that you understand there's a natural intuition that students make in regard to wrong answers, that adults make in regard to how they perceive certain levels of leadership or how they're treated. Those are the things that we garner, because ultimately that will bring teams together.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about the issue of bullying in schools and how TPS tackles that moving forward. And obviously over this past week, it has really come to the forefront with what's going on down with the Miami Dolphins. Now, we looked at that stern face on you as a linebacker there for the University of Toledo. How was that guy that we saw in the locker room, and what's your read on how people are sitting there watching this afternoon and saying, oh my gosh, you're turning the conversation into this? But honestly, you said you were talking about this as early as last week and watching what's happening down in Miami. And talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on their stories coming out of there.
Well, right now it's kind of hard because you haven't received the full scope of the investigation. So obviously you have an attorney being brought in to look in regard to assess really how bad, the culture of the locker room is. I think the biggest thing is that once at the end of the day, depending on how serious it is, it'll tell you just how in touch the coaches were in regard to their players. Mm-hmm. In regard to, when I say being in touch, when they say the superintendent, I said that if anything I want people to remember is that when they look at me, they see students. When they see students, they see me. Is
this a learning moment, though, for athletic programs, even at a high school level?
Yes, because I think they were using the word hazing, and it goes on all too well in regard to as universities, as it carries over into the professional ranks, and in some instances, if you've read in the media, it has even carried over into some of the high schools. And so those are, I think, the wrong image to send out, and more particularly in this Dolphins case. I mean, I'm not sure in regard to the particulars, but I think the vernacular that the gentleman used in regard to the phone message, to me, was out of character in any line of work, whether we're friends or not. Yeah. I don't see it as perceived as the way that you speak to me or anyone else.
But you in a locker room and dealing, you got to be a tough guy. There's that tough guy mentality as far as being on an athletic team and bringing your best game, having that game face.
Yes.
But is making other players tougher a good vibe to have there in that locker room?
Well, I think in regards to the message that is being portrayed is that at the end of the day, in the fourth quarter, are you that guy or young lady or woman is going to be standing next to me or not when it comes down to mental challenges? And those who are mentally strong have a tendency to push on during a time of adversity as well as during a time of falter. And so those are some of the things that I think that the coach should try to bring a culture of, and that within the fourth quarter, you're moving 100 miles per hour, and you got to feel that the gentleman or the young lady next to you is doing the same.
But are we just getting into this era where we got to let off the gas a little bit? I mean, right or wrong?
Well, I think in regard to some of the commentators were making a message straight is that once you begin to realize that what you were doing is not having an impact, that's when you need to find a different way of going about doing it. I think what they did was broke this individual, taking him well beyond his capacity. And I think that's where the problem lies, is that there are ways in regard to how to make individuals mentally strong. And if you feel that one way is not working, then you need to find another avenue. At the same time, they had the right to just release him. If you felt like that gentleman was going to be there at the end of the day in the fourth quarter, well, then obviously that was a player that didn't fit in your scheme, and that needed to be released instead of going through the route that potentially they may have went through.
When you look at this as an administration in the schools, take it off the athletic field for a second, and just this is another cog in the machine that is the daily life in a high school, in an elementary school, is dealing with potential bullying issues. And people will say endlessly, I'm tired of hearing the word, and it's almost like this is we had this in the old days, we have it now, but we are getting to those pressing points of kids are, it's a very gentle subject.
Yes, I mean, it's a very touchy subject, and my thought, there's no room for it in essence. I think there's a way of going about challenging individuals, bringing them up, picking them back up. And so when you're looking at, the measures that some of these kids are resorting to, you begin to realize now it's getting attention. Is that before there wasn't no response, individuals were just taking their own lives. Well, now you're getting individuals who are being bullied to a certain regard and are now taking others. And that's starting to bring tension that's really becoming alarming and putting...
Is this something you guys address? I mean, I'm not saying there are specific situations in TPS, but as an administration, you've got a game plan as far as that's concerned.
In regard to, just as I talked to my central cabinet members, is that when those things are reported, we take a firm stance because you never want to be wrong. So you take that firm stance in the beginning, you do your investigation and move forward. But more importantly, we have our counselors who come in and they're required to do it at each location. Some schools make a month out of it, which obviously you have natural bullying months and et cetera, to where you're putting it on the forefront that we need to be supportive opposed to demeaning. And that's the whole idea of my mentorship group, is that we're in a digital paradox that kids have all the means to communicate but can't communicate. And they find their means of communicating in social media, however, which emotional expression is taken out of content, and before you know it, they're taking it out somewhere else once they meet up. And that's the wrong approach. So developing interpersonal skills, so bringing these kids together within an organized group in regard to saying, this is how you talk to each other, no different than between genders. I think we have our young men who don't know how to communicate with young ladies and lack the entire ability to court in regard to understanding the message of how to speak to them. And so those are the things of why I tell people, you're not going to have a strong men's mentorship group if you don't have a women's group, because ultimately at the end of the day, they have to interact socially.
Last minute, we're getting into the school calendar where we get a lot of days off because of holidays coming up. As you guys turn the corner, get into 2014, what's the most important thing for TPS in these next few weeks as far as finishing out the year strong?
Well, in the next few weeks, like I said, is that one thing that I had and I presented to the board when I was going through the interim process is that here's my 100 and 200 day plan in regard to, and no CEO or no executive should come into an organization without one. But one, setting aside, and that's pretty much I laid it out to a T in regard to literally what I need to do from a day-to-day basis. But more importantly, now you begin to move into the strategic planning stages of things, where now you sit down within each of the departments, develop a strategic plan that is under the overall umbrella. But more importantly, embedding the recommendations of many of the requests for the audit to go within that. And so if obviously you knew we had an audit that went on from Evergreen in regards to how do we go about implementing it, because we have a course of over 5 years to do that, but do it in a strategic plan that the community can observe and see here are some of the things, other recommendations they're phasing in.
Dr. Durant, we appreciate it. Good conversation. Thanks so much and continued good luck.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
You bet. Stay right there. A final word right after this.